Look at all these wild cats. Been taming them down a bit. Come back here. You're okay. Come back here. This is the cutest one out of this little group right here. It'll actually let me pick it up. But yeah, some wild mama just had her babies near our house, and they come by looking for food. Anyways, that's my life. Wake up, take care of all the animals, take care of more animals, take care of our land, and boy, it's starting to get cold out here. Anyways, I thought I'd do a video about my experiences dealing with my rats. So let's get into this, shall we? All right, so let's just start from the beginning. 2019, I started to get into ball pythons, and quickly realized that I needed to get my own breeding of rats going. So went to the local pet shop, didn't really think about like quality. I just went to the pet shop and was like, hey, I need some rats. They gave me some rats, I sexed them and started putting them in colonies, and over time I'd get more and more rats, and eventually I built up 8 colonies of rats. So yeah, it's been a good experience in some ways and a really difficult experience in others, but I've got 8 colonies of rats right there. And so that was in 2019, and the same year I wanted to get into ASFs, and I found someone, was really lucky to find someone here in town that was selling ASFs. So I got 1 colony of ASFs, and I paid like $10 for it. So 3 females and a male. And so yeah, grew those up, and they had some babies, and some of the babies died, and a couple of the females died, and so I had one pair, just a male and a female, and they ended up producing some babies, and those babies survived, and I grew up those babies and made more colonies out of those, and they survived and produced a bunch of babies. And in the meantime, my normal rats were doing okay, and that my normal rat production is what I would use to feed my ball pythons, and I would buy some frozen thawed as I needed. And anyways, fast forward until this last year. When my ASFs exploded, I noticed that there was one ASF that had some really runny poop. I didn't think much of it, but looking back on it, now I recognize that it had some sort of parasite or disease or something. I'm not sure exactly what, but it had something wrong with it. And so what ended up happening is all of my colonies ended up getting this diarrhea. I checked their diet, I changed things up. I went on a strict Missouri diet, thinking, well, it's got to be that. And Missouri rat and mouse, which has a higher protein of 23%. But nothing changed. And so after some time, I decided, well, I better go do something about this. And so I bought some of the Oasis wet tail drops, and I would put that in their water bottles, and it's pretty expensive stuff considering how much I've used. It's cheap if you only need to buy 1 bottle of it. It's like $7 or $8. But I needed to buy a bunch, and looking back on it, I should have just went to a vet and got the whatever standard medications they would have used. But during that time of medicating my rats, production just tanked. And so I really struggled to maintain my ASF colonies. And I had about 10 or so ball pythons at the time that I raised up on ASFs that was their food source. So they didn't get fed as much as I had liked. They still got fed a good fair amount, but I do have a couple ASF rats down here that I have quarantined that are still struggling with the diarrhea. It's been a long struggle, I tell you what. Maybe, I don't even remember when I started medicating, but 6+ months. But I have 19 colonies, and so far everything looks great. They still aren't producing like they were before. They're just starting to get back into a rhythm, and some of the colonies are still too young to produce. And so I am understanding now that maintaining these colonies is a lot of work, takes a lot of organization, and those are just, the organization on my end was just lacking. And so I'm getting better. I'm starting to label the colonies when they became colonies, and the nice thing about the ASFs is when they get too old, I can feed them off, and they've served their purpose. They've lived a comfortable life, and I'm very grateful for what they've done for me. But it's been a really big struggle to keep my ASFs healthy, and I think that I'm in a really good spot. It's not perfect. I'm in a really good spot right now. I'm trying out a varied diet. Let me just show you the diet that I'm working on right now. So I'm giving them 4 things, actually. So I give them this Missouri Ratten diet. I give them 1 part of that. I give them half of a part of this doggy bag dog food. So this is the doggy bag is 18% protein, while the Missouri is 23% protein. The rat and mouse is 23%. I also give them 1 part of these rabbit alfalfa pellets. These rabbit pellets. I raise rabbits as well, so when I found out you could give ASFs pellets, and this pellet is nature-wise, it's 18%. We'll see how it does. I've heard that the rabbit pellets are really good for the babies and the hoppers and all the young ones. So I'm feeding them that, and then I also give them half a part of black oil sunflower seeds. So, and I haven't been doing that long term. I just started it yesterday. So I'm really hoping that this combination of food gives them enough variety. And I actually just cleaned these out on Monday. Today is Wednesday. I've got tons of babies in there. It looks really dirty in their cages, but it's actually just the rabbit pellets spread all over the place. They tend to do that. But the babies, like this is a really big colony of 15 babies in there. So I thought at one point, well, maybe I need to reduce my colony size from 1 to 3 to 1 to 2, but I think I'm just going to keep it at 1 to 3. It seems like they have enough space in there, and winter is coming, And having more room in there they'll be able to share the warmth and keep each other warm. So, yeah. So I am really grateful that things are working out with me ASFs. It hasn't been perfect, but it's been good so far. I've had a really rough time with them, actually. Not necessarily just the ASFs, but the rats in general. Okay, so I've talked about the ASFs, and in order to ensure that I have more production, I'm going to build another rack and have half of that rack dedicated solely to grow outs to replace the next generation. Okay, let me tell you about what's happened with my regular rats. So I bought them in 2019. I've grown them. Eventually, I've got 8 colonies. Well, you know, sometimes things happen and you get diseases in your colonies. I think what I'm going to have to do is manage we get a lot of flies out here in the shed during the summertime. So I'm going to have to figure out how to manage that better, so that if there are any diseases going around, that they're not spreading to all of them. But let me tell you, I lost about 3/4 of my rat population. And it's a very windy day out there, sorry. Let me tell you exactly what happened, or at least what I think happened, is I was in need of some colonies, or just some feeder rats. And I went and got the feeder rats, and I thought, boy, I'll just add these into my current colonies. Not necessarily mix them together, but put them by each other. And by no fault of the other rat breeders, by no fault of the other rat breeder that I got these rats from, my rats got something from them. Yeah, this is the only thing that I can surmise. Something from them, and just ravished them, just killed them. I mean, I had lots of mamas with their babies, and I'd go in there and the babies would be all dead and mama would be dead, and that happened a lot. I'd go in there and there'd be babies just dead and adults dead, like full-grown healthy adults that looked healthy the day before, and they'd be dead. And like I said, it's not the other rat breeders' fault that happened, and let me explain why. I should have put those other rats in a different location, in a quarantine area. But this happens quite frequently in livestock. So for example, with turkeys. In turkey houses, they have, just hundreds and thousands of turkeys. And they grow them up together in batches. So in one turkey shed, you could have a bunch of old turkeys, and in another turkey shed, you could have a bunch of young turkeys. And the way that these turkey growers work is they'll work from one shed to the next. But they have to be careful. If they are working in an old turkey shed and they go to the young turkey shed, just the fact that they have been in an old turkey shed and transporting into the other shed will kill off all the young turkeys. And it's because those turkeys over time develop immunities to some of the diseases through vaccinations and other things. And if they're subjected to those diseases up front, then they're just wiped out. And so what happens is, instead of working from the old turkeys to the young turkeys, they'll work from the young turkeys to the old turkeys. And if they ever have to go back between the two sheds, they have to take showers. People have to take showers. They have to disinfect themselves. And it's a very rigorous process, and it's something that is very fragile. And that's something that I didn't care about it. I didn't respect it. And I paid the price for it and lost about 3/4 of my breeding colonies. And it has really made this breeding season coming up on this breeding season really difficult for me, because I haven't had the live feeder rodents that I've had in the past. And I haven't had the live rodents to be able to replace colonies, which is really important. And so I suspect... So what I've done is I took those original rodents that I got from that guy, and I'm just keeping them. And I'm raising them up for new colonies to replace my old battered colonies. I do have some babies left from my original colony that seem to be pretty resilient, and I do also have some breeders that have passed through the sickness, but everything else has died. But I'm doing good. So I really don't have any normal rat production going right now. I'm just waiting for rats to grow up and to be able to produce more breeders. So I'm having to scrounge together some breeders. Also, I did buy some frozen thawed rodents, but I haven't been feeding frozen thawed for the most part. So it's a real challenge for me to deal with that. So I don't know how my ball python season is going to be. I'm worried that I won't be able to get all the goals that I had set for myself. And I have no one to blame except for myself. In some ways, I'm grateful that this happened, because the rats that I did get, they do seem stronger than my old colonies. So that's a silver lining. To be honest, would I do things differently? Yes, I would. But I can't. So I'm just grateful that I have what I have. I'm grateful that I have my ASFs. I feel like I'm getting production back up. I'm getting back to normal. My colonies look healthy. They don't have the diarrhea problems that they had before. And if I'm not able to resolve the diarrhea problems with these few colonies that I have down there, then they're going to have to go, because I can't deal with illness in my ASFs. It's pointless, really. So if you are integrating your rodent colonies, I highly suggest that you quarantine them. I think that actually my ASFs probably got the diarrhea from my old rat colonies. So if you're doing rat colonies, what I would suggest is in their water bottle. So I've got this wet tail, Oasis wet tail drops. So in their water bottles, what I would suggest you do is I put four tinctures in. So not 4 drops, but 4 tinctures amount in each one. This will give about 40 tinctures. But I'll take 4 tinctures, put it in this bottle, and I would do that for a couple of weeks. And if it's so diluted that it's not harmful to them. In fact, it smells like oranges. It's supposed to taste good to them. But in your quarantine, I would put that in their water bottles for a couple of weeks and just let them eradicate any diseases or anything that would be harmful to your colonies. So that's my bit of advice. This has been a long-winded video because my process has been so long, so really heartbreaking, really, really challenging for me. But I'm getting to the other side. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I feel a little battered and broken, but I'm hopeful for the future. So thanks for listening to me. If you have any questions, please let me know. Know ahead of time that there are struggles. You're going to run into problems with breeding your rodents. Come up with ways to manage them well, and you can plan for success. So this has been Stephen from Clutch Pythons. Thanks for hanging out with me in the rat shed. Bye, guys.